It's like, even to this day, I don't know, when was the next gen consoles come out? A couple months ago, a few months ago, and we're still talking about whether this game has 1080p, whether this game has 720p, whether this game has 60 frames per second, and then they're making conclusions based off of that. And I feel like that is a very superficial assessment of whether or not a game is utilizing next gen capabilities. To stop at just a pixel resolution or just a frame rate, that is really so much about the sum of processes under the hood and not how it equates in pixel resolution and in frame rate. That there is much more that goes on and much more to be considered when we're thinking of graphics being processed pictorially. That's not the end all be all, but yet a lot of us act as though it is. And honestly, I feel like it's a bit insulting. I'm gonna be real with you, and I'm getting really tired of people like obsessing over this. Personally, I would have loved every single game to be 4000p, because I don't even feel like 1080p was a big leap from last gen, because last gen we did have some games that ran at 1080p, 60 frames per second. So the fact that some games aren't doing that next gen, I feel, is not indicative of whether or not a game is utilizing next gen capabilities. It's just a too superficial way of looking at things. And I mean, while we're on the subject of this superficiality, I mean, think about like Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. How a lot of people were making a big deal about the game only being like 2 hours when it comes to the main story. Now, I'm not entirely privy. I'm not quite sure if they beat the entire game like they did all the side missions and whatnot. But even then, I'm thinking that does not judge whether or not a game is worth your money or whether or not they're ripping you off. I really don't feel like it does. I think it's just a bigger picture now. Like, people look at a few numbers and then they make judgments on the game. Like, one number, they said 2 hours long, all of a sudden this game does not warrant a $60 price point, or all of a sudden it does not warrant a $40 price point even. And I'm thinking, is that all a game is to you, is how long it is? Like, come on now, we understand. I know we understand that. It's just like we don't act like we do. We understand that there's more to a game. And especially considering Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes look like one of those games where there are a lot of possibilities, where they give you like this open world to explore and to take on things your own way and stuff. So it has replay value, I feel, more than your average, story-driven shooter or action game, which typically is very linear, where you have a very specific way to go and there isn't much room to deviate from that. And so Metal Gear Solid, I think, has that as an advantage over most of the games that we get today. And I'm not trying to justify the price point, not at all. I'm just saying that we're stopping at a game at face value, that we're looking at one or two numbers, and 1, 2, or 3 numbers, pixel resolution, frame rate, and length, and all of a sudden that's enough to warrant us complaining and making this big deal about stuff. It's like when that game comes out, that's when gamers will be able to either condemn or condone the price point for Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. At this point, I feel like all of us are just making a big deal about nothing, to be honest. Like, I understand it's curious, but you never know when that game comes out, despite its length on its main story or all the stories, you never know. It could feel much more thorough than a demo. I mean, they could give you a whole bunch of features, a whole bunch of like toys to play with when you do it, a whole bunch of unlockables, mutators and stuff along those lines. But no, we don't even think about stuff like that. They could have all these type of options when it comes to like little game modes and how you approach the game when it comes to the single player. But no one's thinking about stuff like that. It's all about, pixel resolution, frame rate, length. I'm just saying, man, that to me to me, this is just silly. I want all games to be at 4000p, 90 to 120 frames per second by now. Honestly, that's the type of leap I'm ready for. But that's not what we're getting. But I'm not going to act like that is the criteria for next gen. It's 1080p, 60 frames per second. No, not at all. There's much more to the game than that. And people even go as far as to saying, oh, well, this isn't utilizing next-gen capabilities because it's only 6-on-6 in Titanfall. And I'm thinking, well, personally, all of my favorite competitive multiplayer games had a small player count. Gears of War, The Last of Us, Counter-Strike, Halo, and in most cases in which I played the game. Rainbow Six Vegas, well, Rainbow Six. But I mean, it's like, wow, is that really what qualifies a game today? For next gen or not, they don't even care about the substance. They don't even care about how the game functions. about all the special effects in the game, about all the features in the game, all of that kind of stuff. All they care about is length, pixel resolution, frame rate, player count. Man, that is such a superficial way of looking at things. I'm telling you, like, some of these people need to try or play their hand at video editing or get a gaming PC and fiddle around with the settings and see how significant the tiniest of things is when it comes to producing a picture on your computer. There's much more that goes on behind the scenes.